New and increased tariffs on steel and aluminum in Canada. Well, not just in Canada, he increased the tariffs for all the countries, but Canada is one of the countries that had been hit hardest. The tariffs apparently from US has been raised from the previous 25% to now 50%. Guess what, Sunny? The new car that we were looking to buy is going to be even more expensive now. Trump signed an executive order on June the 3rd to double steel and aluminum tariffs. These tariff increased duties from the previous 25% to now 50%. What do you think, Sunny?
This is again a big change for Canadian economy, which is heavily reliant on US as well. There is a major outsourcing of even Ontario, the steel being around $30 billion of a trade with the US right now. So this is only a part where Canada as a nation is already looking into moving away from America, but still they're getting a lot of tariffs being imposed after month over month. So this is a big dip on the GDP that we might see. Hoping it's not too bad. Canada, in response, has imposed counter tariffs on $90 billion worth of US imports. Mark Carney's statement has been that he and his government will take his time to evaluate the situation and act accordingly. Canada's trade deficit in April widened to an all-time high of whopping $7.1 billion as tariff imposed by US President Donald Trump sucked out demand for Canadian goods from the United States. That means Canada as a nation has been buying more goods from US than it has been selling. This trade deficit was the reason why tariffs got imposed by Trump from America to all the other countries, because America was seeing its trade deficit to close to around $1 trillion. And recently, Canada has been growing that trade deficit right now. So I know from all the provinces, they are trying to push this narrative where they're trying to get all this Canadian made steel, aluminium being used inside Canada as much as possible. However, the big surplus, the big volume that Canada is already doing was through America. So it's still going to take some time, but the adjustments and the policies, the regulations, the premiers pushing through it will naturally stabilize the economy in some time.
Now, here's the thing. $7.1 billion is what they're claiming that they have sucked out of the Canadian economy and have caused the Canadian economy to go into a deficit with trade with the US. Canada had a $16 billion of surplus that the Canadian Parliamentary Budgetary Officer himself claimed that Canada had by the end of the 2024. I don't remember which YouTube channel, but this was said in another YouTube channel that I was listening to about these tariffs. It's not that the steel and aluminum tariffs that are being imposed by Donald Trump onto Canada are completely illegal or should not be there at all. I do agree with the Canadian businesses that these tariffs are really hurting both sides, the businesses on both sides in Canada and in the US as well. But here's the thing, when you have a surplus against a country, you need to give another country a chance as well to gain a surplus. But if you are a country that has been getting surplus all the times, other country, they are not benefiting out of the trade. Plus the NAFTA agreement or the new CUSMA agreement that we have, it is going to be putting salt on the wound. Now, again, I think this is Donald Trump coming out and saying this is our time to actually gain a surplus over Canada, but there is no telling right now, and I don't think there is an economist out there who can actually predict if Donald Trump is going to end this tariff soon, or if these tariffs are going to last the whole term, which is for 4 years. I mean, in 2018, when he imposed tariffs, they lasted for almost 10 and a half months. So there is no telling right now. again, how are these tariffs, if we see in micro examples, how are these tariffs hurting the businesses in Canada? Uh, Now, if you take an example of a business, of a tool and die company, or of a company that is building small steel and aluminum products, they have to make these products using some raw material, raw steel and raw aluminum. Under the CUSMA agreement, if Canada is exporting steel and aluminum to US, they also have to buy back some of the steel and aluminum from US suppliers into Canada. And when when Canadian businesses, they are trying to buy raw material from US, they are able to sell the goods at a cheaper rate in Canada. Why? Because if Canadian businesses were to buy the same raw material, the same raw steel and raw aluminum from Montreal aluminum mills or steel mills, for example, in Hamilton, Ontario, or other provinces, and they were to add on the extra cost of trucking just between the provinces, including the internal provinces trade barriers, the same manufactured product, the same manufactured good is going to cost 2 or maybe even 3 times more. This is why the Canadian businesses, especially in the liquor industry or in the steel manufacturing industry, usually come out and they say that buying raw material and steel is easier to do business with US than to do business within Canada. And with the new high tariffs, these businesses, they have to again strategize or re-strategize their business plan, and they have to re-evaluate how they are going to manufacture these goods in able to survive in the market. I mean, just take this example. Catherine Cobden, President and CEO of the Canadian Steel Producers Association, said the 50% tariff will essentially close the US markets to the Canada's domestic industry for half of its production. Again, we are going to see a similar situation what happened with General Motors, where they almost halved the labor force that they had working in their factories, or other businesses who began laying off the moment tariffs were announced. Even a 10% tariff on the food or on the auto industry in Canada, it's going to hurt on a very huge scale. And we already know almost 55-60% of Canadians are already living paycheck to paycheck. And when you add on almost 80% of mortgages that people have on their houses, when they have so much expenses, when the food is at a all-time high, people would rather eat their food from food banks than actually buy from high-end groceries, for example, Loblaws or other stores. 100% people are going to suffer the greatest in these situations. Any thoughts you want to put in, Sunny?
There's another example that we have over here, which is Pacific Bolt Manufacturing, a bolt and fastener company in Langley, British Columbia, previously imported raw steel from US states like California and Ohio. However, due to 50% tariff imposed by US on steels and aluminium, the company has shifted its purchasing to Quebec. This pivot has significantly increased transportation costs, as trucking heavily materials across Canada is expensive. Now, we have the longest undefended border across two nations. You would think that trading among the provinces would be cheaper, right? But no, it's not. Trading between the Canada provinces and some US states is much cheaper, just because of the distance it need to travel from the manufacturing plant to the production plant and then to the suppliers and stuff. So these transportation costs are adding up as the tariffs are increasing, and how the company will try to absorb as much as they can, but at some point they will distribute these costs over to the consumer, whether it being in cars or whether it being in housing cost or any other shape or form.